everybody, and welcome to the Quilt Show. Well, I'm here in Houston trying to stay safe during COVID, while Alex and all the guests are in California. And today's show, you're not going to want to miss. It is going to be a tapestry of color with Sujata Shah and Freddy Moran. Stick around. It is wonderful.
And now, your hosts for the Quilt Show, Alex Anderson and Ricky Timms.
Hey everyone, welcome to my home in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm here with my friend Sujata Shah. Sujata?
Hello.
Sujata is in my mini group and I learned a whole lot about her I didn't know, and we'll get to that in a few moments. But I'm here, Ricky's in Colorado, and we're doing shows a little differently for the next 6 months or so because of COVID. So you understand, we got to stay safe. I do not want Ricky on an airplane. So Sujata, I am so glad that you're here. You didn't even have to get on an airplane and fly somewhere.
It was an easy ride.
My commute was smaller than yours, okay? Anyway, Sujata is from India, and she brings so much of the India flavor into her work. So tell us about when you came here from India. When was that about?
Oh, I was 22 when I came here.
Okay.
It was in 1986, and I came here to join my husband. He was at school doing his PhD.
Okay. And what's your background?
I'm a graphic designer. I learned graphic design in India, which means nothing over here.
Why?
Because I did typography and illustration, and everything was computerized here. So
I get it, because see, I have a strong graphic design background, and it's back when we used like T-squares and all that stuff. I mean,
Right.
forget this computer stuff, right?
Exactly.
Right. Now, you, your quilts really have a feel of India. Tell us about this one. And you guys, we're going to see full shots of them too, so don't freak out as we're touching them and moving them and all that. Tell us about this one.
So this one is called Windmills. I made this in Pennsylvania. But I have to tell you, when I moved to San Francisco, everything was gray, right? Coming from colors of India and coming to San Francisco, there was such a contrast. So I sort of kept the Indian colors in my head, in my heart, and so anything I did, colors have to be the first thing. This quilt in particular, it reflects the colors of India. If you go to the markets, if you go to any weddings or any occasions, you would see bright and beautiful colors. So that's what I did.
This is just fabulous. Okay. Now, what about this quilt?
This quilt is one of my favorite quilts. This quilt reminds me of the time when I used to go with my mom to shop for fabrics. Mm-hmm. I was a self-proclaimed designer at home. And I would go with my
designer
mom.
Of what?
Of clothing.
Okay.
So
okay.
In India, what we do is we hire tailor.
Uh-huh.
They come home. You give them fabric. They stay home for like entire day, and they take your measurements and they make custom clothing. So I would buy fabric for rest of the family members and myself, and then give the pattern to the tailor, whatever we wanted, and he would sew the clothes. So many trips were made to the fabric stores, and again, this quilt reflects the colors of India. Bright gray tones, just beautiful, bold colors.
Now, when you bought fabric, wouldn't it be more silks for your clothing?
Not really, because that would be the everyday clothing. Silk would be occasional clothing. So we would still buy them, but it would be mostly cottons and polyester. And
I have to tell you, when I was looking at the pictures before this segment of India, I mean, color, 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 color. And I never thought of San Francisco as being without color. You're right.
Well, when you compare to India, I mean, there's no color. I literally felt like I was walking wearing a costume when I wore my Indian clothes over here, like a color image in a black and white movie.
Oh, wow.
That's how I felt.
Okay. Look, the back is colorful too here. Okay. Tell us about this one.
Okay, so this quilt is called Confetti. This holds everything we do in India. We recycle. We don't throw away anything. If things get broken, we fix it. there are old clothes that go as hand-me-down, and in my case, I use them in my quilts. So there are a couple of pieces here that I have used of my husband's shirt. This shirt was my favorite. Kids were really young, and he used to wear this shirt a lot, and this color was very unusual for him, and I had bought it for him. So I wanted to put it somewhere where it would forever stay in a quilt. Some of these quilts are like forever quilts. I would never get rid of them. And so it's called confetti because all the little bits and pieces that were actually in my trash can, that made the quilt.
So you still are very frugal with your fabrics then?
I'm not really frugal, but I'm drawn more and more towards scraps. Scraps because that's what Indian people use in their quilts. And I think I'm going back to my roots. More and more I make quilts, I feel like I don't like straight lines. I like everything hand done. And so when I'm making the quilts, I'm also keeping that in mind, that it looks like it's humble, and it looks like I made from anything. You can make beautiful things from pretty much anything.
I just adore this. Now, back in the day, I heard you said something to your mom that I just cannot believe those. It's almost like you were talking dirty, Sujata.
Yes. So growing up, there was this everyday ritual. You take your laundry from the outside and bring it in. And then what you do is you go through the clothing and see if there's a button to be mended or hems to be stitched. And my mom would always say that you should do that. And I'll say, I'll die. I will die before I pick a needle in my hand. And so
Hey, you know what? You didn't.
I didn't. I think it has made me live longer. So, yes.
Wow.
I do want to say one thing that,
Sure.
I did make my mom a couple of quilts that were hand appliqued and hand quilted. And so there's, I kind of got on the good side of my mom.
Did she sew or anything? Or?
She did.
Oh, did she?
She did. She made her own blouses. She did embroidery. She did a lot of stuff. She made clothes for us. She did.
Well, Sujata, this does not look like you.
So, Alex, this is my first ever quilt.
Oh, really?
My second child was 8 months old, and I was at home. A friend of my husband gave me a gift of a quilt class. I was bored out of my ears in the evenings, and so I took this class. It was a basic sampler to learn everything about quilting, matching points, doing the applique, and hand quilting.
That's pretty good.
And here's the story behind the quilt is that the sample in the class was in the 80s
right.
now, and country blue colors. And I went to buy the fabric, and the only colors that I could settle with were these colors. They were much brighter, in 1991. So I went with my fabrics, and the teacher said, Sujata, your colors are so Indian. And I'm like, I am from India. I can't live without them.
Oh, boy. Oh, the stitching on this, really. Tell us about this.
So this quilt, again, it's very special to me. Every quilt is becoming personal to me. My mom had a stroke 3 years ago. And I was in a hurry going to India and staying there as long as it would take to take care of her.
Right.
And the morning of the flight, I'm thinking what to bring with me. And there was a quilt top that was ready. And I said, I'm just going to quickly baste it and take it. And so all the stitching, almost half of the stitching was done sitting by my mom, talking about her past and my life and what I do. And, this quilt really represents that life is not perfect, and somehow we still keep going on. So that's the quilt.
Your quilts are from your complete body and soul.
Thank you. I like to make quilts for myself first. And so, that's...
Okay, now this one.
This one, so this is the block that we call Birds in the Air, but I like to change it up a little bit, and so this is based on the free form blocks that I have in my book. As you can see that the lines are not diagonal point to point, and I want the movement, I want the color with the movement, I want contrast with the size and shape and everything. This is, again, I used to watch sunsets with my father in the balcony of our home. And so this quilt is dedicated to my dad.
Before we get to the last one, I learned that when people would come visit you here in the Bay Area, you would hide your work.
Oh my gosh, yes. Everywhere, up until I was in Seattle. I was a closet quilter. I did not think quilting was something that I would, remember I told my mom I would die before I pick a needle.
Yeah.
I didn't look at sewing as something good to do. I was a designer, and sewing is something we hired people to do. And so for me, that was a step down from what I wanted to be in this world. And so
interesting.
I, and it took me a while to admit or accept that I am a quilter.
An artist. This is a phenomenal quilt.
Thank you. This is a Siddi quilt. It's my interpretation of a Siddi quilt. Siddi community are the African diaspora of India. African people moved from Africa, east coast of Africa to India about 800 years ago. Okay. And then there were some that were brought in by Portuguese people as slaves to India. And after the Portuguese people left, the Siddi people had sort of fled to the jungles of India, and they make quilts that are really just unique to them. They gather the scraps literally like rag pickers and make these beautiful quilts. They're all hand sewn until they find the big, large background. They sort of wait, and then once they find the backing, they start stitching from outside in. It's completely different than what we do here.
And what's it called?
It's called a Siddi quilt or a Kawandi. Kawandi means a quilt.
Okay.
Kawandi is their name for a quilt.
Okay. Well, this also has is very meaningful to you.
Yes, it is. It has a special meaning, especially this year, because I was making this quilt during the Black Lives Matters, and the cops that were involved in the murder were arrested on the day I decided the name for this quilt. And the quilt is called Turning Point. So that's the story, and that's why it's special to me.
I can't wait to get started. How about you? Stick around. When we come back, she's going to spin some magic for us. Sujata is. Yes, she is. Welcome back, everyone. I want you to know we're taking all precautions here so that everybody's safe. Everybody has masks on, and we're doing social distancing and all that. However, I'm going to take mine off because I actually got tested a couple days ago, and I am negative. So we're all good to go.
Very good.
Now, you're going to take us through how to do these Kawandi quilts. I love them, Sujata, and I've loved watching you do them in our little mini group, and I really didn't know how. So let's talk about kind of what started it, okay? Which would be this, the Gee's bands, okay?
Yes. So we all know Gee's band quilts are African quilters from Alabama, and they did their quilts, they made their quilts with whatever they had on hand. Basically the used garments, whatever clothing pieces that they had. And when I saw their quilts, that's the first time I felt like I was connected with my roots. I felt like, oh, these are the kind of quilts I have seen in India. And what I mean by that is quilts made with, regular clothing, scraps, and not blocks, but just patchwork put together. And lately, I have been coming closer and closer to my roots. Working on quilts that I have seen in the past on the rooftops, and when we drive by or we get on the train and we see them in the distance on dwellings just drying in the air or air drying. So Kawandi quilts are basically made by Siddi people. Siddi people are African diaspora of India.
How do you spell that?
It's S-I-D-D-I.
Okay, because I was hearing city.
Okay.
Yeah, so
okay.
city.
City.
Okay.
City people.
All right.
It's actually the name of a community. Siddi is a community.
Okay.
And they make these quilts with tiny patches, scraps from all over. They don't really go to the fabric shops and buy their fabrics.
Right.
They collect all the scraps, and then when they have enough scraps in their bag, could be grocery bag or whatever, and then when they find a large enough sari cloth, a piece of sari that they can use as backing.
That would be like a gold mine.
That would be like a gold mine.
Yeah.
Because they come from poor families, and they try to make do with whatever they have.
Well, let's take a look at this one, Sujata, because actually we'll be working on this today. Tell us about it.
So this quilt, basically the difference between any American quilts that we have seen or made versus Siddi quilt is that the work is done from outside in, meaning that you start patchwork from outside, and then you start stitching from outside, and you inch towards the center, and then you finish the quilt by stitching the last piece on top of all of the pieces that you have stitched.
And look at this one over here. Let's take a look at this so everybody can see. I just think these are just incredible.
So what happens here is that I had this long table runner like quilt that I decided, and the decision was made by actually the backing fabric.
Okay.
I went to my tour to India, and we had hand dyed this little scarf, and I said, why not just use that as the backing? And you feel that it's just.
What is that fabric?
So this is really, it's like a lawn cloth. It's what you would, you could use Liberty of London or any sort of, really thin material.
Okay.
You have to remember sari fabric, which is really, fine fabric. You can see through that fabric. So
okay, and
so
I keep
that's
thinking
what this
silk with sari, but
no, not everybody can afford silk in India. So you would see silk pieces in Kawandis, but they would be brought from the tailors. He would have a scrap that he has made blouses for somebody else, and the cutoffs that are left over, they would go and bring those pieces.
Now, what about these little guys on top?
So these are called ticklies. Or kites. They sort of relate to this part as decorating of the Kawandi. So every quilter would have her own style. Some would put more, some would put less, some would put in a very organized way, and some would just go.
So how do they do this? I mean, I would guess there's no design wall or anything like that.
No, there are no design walls in India, especially with city people. There are no design walls. So what they do is they sit on the floor and they start stitching. It's like living in the moment as far as life is concerned. It's like living every moment. You make the decision of all your fabric only when you come to it. So,
Well, let's get stitching, but I want to talk about the tools first, okay?
Okay.
So, you love these needles.
I love bohin needles. I love bohin embroidery needles. I actually sometimes even use it for quilting. But it's great for big stitch quilting, and it's also because the embroidery needles have larger holes, eye holes, and so it's easier to thread thicker thread.
Okay. So, and this thread?
And I have this 12 weight Wonderfil specialty thread, and it's called spaghetti thread.
Okay.
And one thing about the Siddi quilts, they usually use only white thread, because that's the one that's readily available. And so I have started using white thread in my quilts all the time.
And then you're using applique scissors?
I love applique scissors because the blade is short, and it's just quick to just snip whatever. I also use it for when I make my Siddi quilt, I tear the fabric, and so all I need is a little snippet here and there. I'm going to use this fabric right here, and tearing is good because that's the natural way of getting a straight of the grain, and so that's what I use the scissors for, thread and fabric.
Okay, so let's take a look at what's going on here.
Okay, so I wanted to get started before I came here and also show you what I have already done. I began with this corner. So usually, most all the time, Kawandis begin in actually corners of the quilt.
Okay.
So there's the first corner right here, and I started with the corner fabric, and before I got to the end, you see this little triangle that I have here.
Let me hold this up.
Okay.
And what is this called?
This is called fula, which is flower, and it's to decorate the quilt. You could do it at the end or at the beginning. I like it in the beginning because, imagine if this quilt was really large. If I was a Siddi woman, I probably would run out of fabrics by the time I get to the center.
Okay.
Because I'm using only the scraps that I have found. And so whatever I put here may not even matter when I come to the center. So it's something unique to that point in my life, that point in that quilt. But then as you progress more, you might find something totally different in the center. So then I stitched the corner, and then I want to show you this. So every time you start, you would fold the edge, 2 edges, the corner to corner, and then the next piece will go that will overlap the previous piece.
Okay, but let's talk about what you're sewing on, because this is different for me.
Right.
Right?
Right. So before you even get here, remember the sari fabric that I have now found, let's say, to make the back.
Okay. Let's take a look.
Here,
What do we have?
Here, there's an old piece of
Cotton.
that I have, and it's simple, but that's another thing. You really don't match your back and front because you don't have any control over what fabrics you have. So I start with the whatever size that I have as a backing, and I use batting to make it easy on my hands.
Okay.
Instead of using the layers of fabrics that Siddi people would use.
And this is
as
super
batting.
fine.
This is super fine. So this is Quilter's Dream Request.
The lightest one.
The lightest one.
All right.
And so I cut my batting about 1/2 inch smaller than the back. And then I go ahead and fold over the backing onto the batting, and I go ahead and baste the stitch.
Okay.
Because when I'm working with all these little pieces, I want to find one easy way to start. And it's really hard at the beginning, the edges, because everything is loose, So if there's one edge secured, that's a good thing.
Okay,
so,
well, take some stitches for us.
Okay, let's do that. So I have a piece here, right here. I put my thimble just to push the needle through.
All right.
I usually don't push the needle don't take the stitches with the thimble on. But so I have my first 3 fingers. I am going to take these out because I haven't made that decision yet. I come around and let's see.
I've seen these at Mini Group, and they explained it to me, but seeing it is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, so it's been, I think okay, so I'm stitching here. Your goal is to secure the corner of the square that you have taken. So I almost always make sure that.
I'm going to show the camera that because I think that's really important.
Okay.
Hold on, move your hand.
Okay, here.
Right
so
there.
You always
Okay,
want to secure the corner, and then instead of rocking the needle, I'm going to actually.
And you're holding the needle.
I'm holding the needle, and I am rocking the fabric. Now at this point, because the fabric layers, I want to tell you that I have fold over here, the fold over here of the bottom fabric. So I have like 4 layers of fabric that I'm going through. So the edge is usually a little rough to work on, but as you get inside, it becomes easier. So I pull the needle here. Okay, and then again, you see I'm actually inserting the fabric layers in the needle instead of needle moving ahead.
Now let's talk about the tassels. That's what I call them.
Fula. So the tassels are fula.
Fula. How do you spell that?
F-U-L-A. Fula.
Okay.
Right? Now they mean flowers in India. And actually I have it black here, but they usually get pretty decorative.
Yeah.
And you would have a red, you would have, any colors basically. That's to decorate your quilt. And until you put the little triangles at 4 corners, your quilt is not finished. And I have seen this personally. I have previously I've done all the quilt, and then I go, it just looks like any American quilt.
Because it doesn't have the fula.
It doesn't have the fula. So
I love that.
Gotta have the fula.
Okay, let's take a look at these. All right.
Okay, so these I prepared these 4 different layouts, as we call it. Over here, the pieces are somewhat the same size. I started at the corner, and then I went around and around. And just like stitching, your fabrics also go around and around. So I would be stitching from edge and inching towards inward, and when I came to this edge where the raw edges started to...
You know how the Mini Group made you a quilt?
Yes.
You would have had a heart attack watching us do it.
I wish I was there to see it.
I wish you would have had a heart attack. That's all I'm going to say.
So this one right here, it's basically a linear. If you were to make an art quilt, for instance, all by hand, then this is what I would think about, is that, you know, I would do stitching, I would lay the fabric in linear fashion, but then the stitching always goes in the circular fashion, you know.
And these are actually placemats, right?
These are placemats. We put our dinner plates on it.
So what's the story of this here?
So remember we talked about did we talk about the tickly? This is the one of the tickly. It's for the decorative purpose. Let me show you that on this quilt right here. I'm going to move this here so you can see it. Okay. So
are these considered ticklies?
These are all ticklies.
Okay.
These are all like little patches that actually enhance the background. And so I would stitch, you know, 4 lines into that. I decided, oh, I want to start putting these extra pieces. But you would put the pieces and then move on. You don't do anything about this. So the edges are folded on 3 sides, and I catch that in this line, and then the next line, and the next. So you really don't know how it's going to turn out until you come to the last edge of that.
I think one more here, right?
Okay, and so this one was, you know, I wanted to make some sort of corners, and corners are representing the solid pillars of the house in Siddi community. So then it protects, you know, the house from the evil eyes and, you know, the bad energy. And so that's what these yellow. So I decided that I wanted 4 corners on my quilt.
Okay, but I'm still back to this now. How do you decide the ticklies? How do you decide to put them in? Oh, grab that one quilt over there.
Oh, right here. Mind. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, so let's take a look, because this is filled with ticklies in the middle, right?
Yes.
Okay, so how do you decide when to put them in?
Okay, so when it came to the center, as I said, you know, one thing I want to make sure that I tell you, that in any quilt, the last piece comes all the way on the top. So over here for this, right here. Okay, let's see, this is the piece right here that came and covered my batting all the way.
All right.
So for this quilt, my last piece actually was this off-white color that you see.
Did you know you were going to put ticklies on it?
No, I did not know that. So that's the point. It's like living in the moment and deciding that, oh, this is missing this. So it's you know, I decide what is missing and all that. So it's really engaging until the last minute, and that's the process I love to do.
I know you guys love this too. I want to make this quilt. I want to have ticklies. I want to have all that good stuff. Well, when we come back, you're going to teach us how you do your free form blocks, and then we're going to go to Freddy Moran's house. We just have a lot of really great things from really great women in my mini group. Stick around. Welcome back, everyone. I'm here with my friend Sujata. And if hand sewing isn't your jam, although I do think I want to try what we just did, super fun, you're going to show us how to get the look with a sewing machine.
Right.
Freeform piecing.
Freeform blocks, that's what we're going to do today.
Okay.
So I figured out that if I wanted the look of handmade in my machine work, I needed to follow my gut and say imperfections are okay in a quilt, because if you sew anything by hand, as far as I know, if I'm sewing anything by hand, it's never going to be perfect. And so I figured how to make a quick block, but it looks like it's hand sewn. So that's what we're going to do today.
I want to talk about your fabric, though. You know, when we went away on our little retreat, you let me use some of your fabric, and it was just, like, this is so beautiful.
Thank you. So I follow one technique about picking colors. I have one rule, and that everything works because I come from India. So red, green, everything is neutral, right? Every color is neutral.
Oh, you can go duke that out with Freddie.
Oh, yeah, right. But if you were to get choosy with your fabrics and your shades and all that, what I like to do is I like to use multiple shades of the same color. When you're outside, you're in the sunshine, you would wear a fabric, a color, a garment with just one color. But the way you move, the way the light hits that fabric, you're going to see multiple shades of the same color. And so that's what I want. I want highlight, I want the medium tone of the same color and the dark one. And so I follow that with every color that I pick. And then I throw in a couple of colors, like a thing that I ran out of fabric and I needed an extra piece of fabric. And so that's what I follow.
Are these oak shots?
These are all mixed. I like Kona. No, they're not oak shots, but they're Kona and other P&B cottons and all that. So yes. So freeform blocks are basically, I go back to my mom again and say, if she were to make something, what would she do? She would not have any tools. She would not have design walls. She wouldn't even have this cutting board.
And I want to back up because you said your mom had a stroke. Is she okay?
She's okay. Thank you for asking. Good. Thank you. Yes, she's doing wonderful.
Great.
Thank you. So if she were to make something, what would she do? She would find some squares of pieces. She would stack them up, and then she would cut right into it. She would not do the seam allowance or the way we do quilting over here. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. The only thing I keep in mind is I stack my fabrics in an order, a specific order, which is light, dark, light, dark.
Okay.
So it's alternating order, and it is all relative, right? I mean, this yellow can be dark next to this light lemon.
It depends who it's playing with, right?
Exactly, right?
Okay, light, dark, light, dark.
Light, dark, light, dark. So you get to choose there. And then here I'm going to do is I'm going to stack them up edge to edge together. Now you said you're going to sew for me,
I'll
right,
sew for
Alex?
you.
Okay.
And you will get imperfection. I can
I
promise you
am
that.
going to, in order to get the imperfection, all I have to do is just cut that
No,
fabric.
all you have to do is ask me to sew it.
I see what you mean.
Yes.
Oh, you're funny. Okay, so I'm going to roughly put this, of course I'm going to use the grid of the mat as my guiding tool.
Really?
I am, just so that, because I'm making this entire quilt, I really I want it to look like I made the effort, but I didn't quite get there.
Okay.
So I'm not going to cut point to point. What I'm going to do is just take a fresh blade. It's very important because you're cutting layers after layers. So change your blades, and then I just go from this end. I'm not going to the corner. Add a little curve to it, hold it right there, and boom. So when you separate that, you see that little gentle curve. Now you don't want to do valley and hills over here. You just want to go smooth curve right there. And then just take the top fabric and put it at the bottom. Anyway, right or left, doesn't really matter. Now what you have is the order of sewing your blocks. That's it. So you're going to, for me, what you're going to do is you're going to sew. These are all right side up. By the way, if you're using the printed fabrics.
Correct.
Yes. If you're using solids, just remember, don't move around fabrics too much. You have one side up. And when I go to sew, I'm going to put this piece right here. I just sort of see how the curves are just matching.
Now let me ask you something. That's a pretty gentle curve. Do you pretty much stick to that way?
I stick with that. I also use scissors when I cut. So here's a little thing about scissors. If you're cutting with scissors, the cut goes only as far as the blade, length of the blade.
Right.
So you're going to do this multiple times. You're going to do that movement of cutting. And so your cut, you'll try if I were to cut this straight with scissor, I would stop somewhere because the blade's edge, tip has come. And then I'll go again. My hand will shift, something will happen, and I'll never get that straight cut.
Okay.
And so that's what I follow with this. So gentle cut is good. So at this point, because you're mimicking the curve, the cut curve with the seam, you are just going to match the points right there.
Oh, here, let me show
and
everybody.
So
right here. Right on top. Right here. There
you go. Yes.
Okay.
And so you're just going to do a few stitches, 4 or 5 stitches to anchor the point of the top piece.
I mean, like, okay, let me go back to this here.
Okay, all right.
Let's go back here,
That's
you guys.
really,
like,
yeah.
really that point, but isn't going to get jogged off kind of weird?
It will, because
Okay.
you haven't added the seam allowance. It's just
Okay.
coming later. So this is completely reverse than what we do with traditional quilting.
And you know what's so funny, everybody, is I kept saying, well, let's show what we're doing. Let's show what we're doing.
Yeah.
We
And then-
can't.
And then Alex, if you use 2 hands when you sew, so top, yes, top and bottom. And
Like that?
Yes. And then you're actually adjusting your bottom piece rather than the top piece. So
Okay.
you're inserting towards your left. You're just going towards left as you sew, and it
Maybe
lines
this was
up.
a bad idea.
Well, maybe next one I'll do.
Okay.
How about that? No, you're doing great. It's fine.
All right, really, truly?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And it's okay that they're shifting and getting a
It's
little
okay.
weird.
It's very forgiving. This technique is very forgiving because guess what? At the end, you're going to square up all the blocks. So
Got
it
it.
works.
So what were these cut at originally?
They were 6 inches.
Okay.
Let me make sure that I'm saying
They look
it
a little
right.
bigger
It's
than that.
7
7?
inches.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So at this point, I don't even go to my ironing board. I don't.
Okay.
Because I am doing chain piece. I like to do chain piecing, at least this stack,
Okay.
so that I'm not messing up. And so at this point, I would just finger press, and look how beautiful your cut is.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful. So you will finish this
Gotcha.
whole stack, and when you finish with that, you will have you'll have sewn these 4 pieces. Guess what you have here? You have 4 half square triangles that are free form right there. Okay, right here. So once you have that, now you want to do hourglass block. How
Okay.
would-
I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I'm following you.
Okay, so for hourglass, let's put this on the side here.
Okay.
For hourglass block, what you've already, I call it messed up these 2 corners.
And
not you.
I'm messing up
No.
here. Okay, I'm messing
No,
okay.
not you, but we have, by sewing, this is already used up. So now you want to do the lining up of the squares, you select the opposite side, right? So now I have this corner rather evenly.
So basically cut at 7, trim at 6? Or whatever, right?
Whatever
Who
comes.
cares?
Now that's a good point because everybody's hand is different. You may go wider on your curve. Somebody would be a little bit, conservative, and they would go as much straight as possible. Because I've seen people come in my classes and go, "I don't think I can do that wonky," and they would do straight, and
Okay.
then they would see everybody's wonky, and they go, "Oh,
Then they get wonkied
I think I
out.
want to get that."
Yeah.
So then all the blocks that she has made now are all different, and so it works. Now the next cut, I'm just going to go
Okay.
across here.
Okay.
Right? You want to make sure, sometimes if you want to make sure, you want to fold this and you want to see the darks are on the opposite. The top dark is here and the second dark is on the
Gotcha.
opposite
And
side.
you've pressed open.
And I have pressed it
Okay.
open. So just to make sure, if you're not sure, you just kind of fold over and go, oh yeah, dark is across each other in the light. And so what I'll do is I'll make another cut.
And a really sharp blade.
Yes,
Really.
very sharp blade.
Yes.
And see, now what you have is another cut, and you're going to follow the same way of sewing.
Okay.
Only this time, again, I'm going to take the top and put it at the bottom, and you've got your new
I
block.
just love this, Sujata. I just love this.
Oh, good.
Let's take a look at these over
okay,
here,
so then
okay?
you have half square triangle.
I'm
Okay.
not even sure why this is here.
Okay.
Oh,
Let's
well,
take
what-
that. Yeah.
Goodbye. Okay.
All right. So let me show you. You have the hourglass block right here. I'm going to start with that. In this quilt right here. Okay.
Let me
I'm
hold
gonna
it.
let
Let
you
me
do
hold
it.
it this
Yeah.
way. Oh, right here in the center.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
In the center
Oops.
is the hourglass block.
Oh yeah. And it is wonky.
And there's just a slight bit of, you at first glance you would see that, oh, there's an hourglass block, but then you realize that it's a little wonky.
Yeah.
And so there's that. Okay. Now imagine if this was already sewn.
Okay.
And I'm going to use that white paper if you don't mind.
Oh, that's what that white paper was for.
Actually, no, but I just thought that would be a good
Oh,
help.
okay.
So if I trim these blocks, imagine this is sewn together, and I trim the sides and all around it. Let's just make it into a square, and I cut it diagonally.
Again, then
I've got my flying geese. So if you had used just 2-color fabric, then you would get your flying geese.
Here's this.
And if you use it, if you cut it this way, then you have lighter background and with the darker geese. So that's the good thing about it. So you want to always start with a larger square, and then you can get smaller.
Let's take a look at this one too.
So here's the flying geese. All the flying geese, small, big, fat, skinny, everybody put together, and so it creates the movement, and that's what
Fabulous. Okay, so what about this?
So this one here.
I just love this, Sujata.
So this one here, you look at all the corners, they're all imperfect. I like imperfections in my quilt. I really think perfection is overrated.
Well,
so,
you are amazing, my friend.
Thank you.
I want to talk about a couple things. Let's get to business. And one business is that you have this book that you wrote
in 2014.
I was going to say that, yeah.
Right.
And this book is very, very, very special.
Yes, it is. So I want to tell you a very personal story.
Okay.
I moved here in 1986. Early 87 is when we moved to the Bay Area. We moved here in January, and my father passed away in March, within about 6 or 7 weeks of my coming here. And at the time, I didn't know anybody, and I was fresh artist, fresh graduate from India. And my mom and dad, my dad especially, always thought I was going to be an artist, and I was going to be this famous artist, whatever. And he really he wasn't here to see it. And somehow in my subconscious mind, I was always thinking that somehow I'm going to put his name out here
in the
and
book.
So in the book, and
it's
so
dedicated to him?
This book is dedicated to my father, and everything that he taught me.
Boy, this is beautiful. Can people still get this book?
Yeah, they can get it through me. I think CNT still has the book. So
I think
they can get it through me.
Great thing about CNT is if the book is out of print, you can get an ebook, you can get print on demand, etc.
Okay.
Okay, so that's there at CNT Publishing. But do you have any that you want to sell?
I do.
That you can autograph or something?
I do have autographed copies at home,
cool.
and I can sell them too. Yes.
Now, the other thing you have to know too is that because of COVID and all of that, Sujata is teaching online. She is working with guilds, you're doing workshops,
right,
and all that good stuff. Folks, this is the future, at least for a while. I know as a teacher, it's fabulous.
It is amazing.
You can connect worldwide.
Yes, yes.
So what's your website, friend?
It's the Root Connection. It's the blog, and I have all the information that's needed over there.
Okay.
About the online classes, as well as the tours to India, and my book, and
now
everything I did.
The other thing is we're going to go to Freddy Moran's house next, and I know you get to go see her tomorrow. We love Freddy so much, but after we go to Freddy's, we're going to have an after set, and you're going to learn about the tours that Sujata and Amy Butler do when they go to India. And I think you will start a piggy bank like yesterday so that you can join them. So Sujata, thank you so very much. I wish I could hug you.
Oh, thank you for having me. Let's do this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Stick around for Freddy, okay? On the next Quilt Show, we're in the San Francisco Bay Area at my house, and I'm here with the big J's. We have Jennifer Sampu, the house party, right?
Yep.
And then Julie Silber.
I'm smiling.
And then where's Joe? Where's Joe?
Oh.
And Joe Cunningham. Hey, you guys, widen it up, man. Widen it up. So anyways, we have a lot of really great things coming. What are you going to do, Jennifer?
I'm going to light your ombre fire with 2 projects.
Okay.
The star and the Modern Madras table runner.
Okay, and then you two. I'm scared, Julie and Joe. What are you guys doing?
We brought some great old quilts, and we're going to look at them and talk about them and how I make versions of them.
And the old expression, don't look back, we're looking back.
We're looking
Some
back.
great
Do look
old
back.
quilts.
Yeah. It is a house party! Woohoo!
You're invited.
Welcome back, everyone. We're in the San Francisco Bay Area at my house, but if you come to this area and you get invited to this person's house, Miss Freddy Moran's. You must go because her house is as unique as she is.
I love color so much that I love living in it. I love being surrounded by it, and I've never been to anyone's house that is quite as colorful as mine. I painted my house 34 different colors, and I never realized that I liked purple until I started painting. I designed my kitchen around the counters. I saw a butterscotch marble, and so that became kind of my starting point. Neil's room, I think, is my favorite. It is bright, bright red, and then it has yellow and red furniture, and my husband was colorblind, so it was a marriage made in heaven. I like that. When I walked in the front door, there was a tree. And how many houses do you know that have trees growing inside? My very favorite room is my studio because I feel very comfortable there. Good morning, sweetheart. How are you? My house would say I am an artist. My house would say the outdoors and the indoors are very compatible. I've lived in this house 24 years now. I divide my life into 3 segments. 1 are my school years, 2 are my parenting years, and 3 are my artist years. I graduated from college as an art major, and when you raise a family of 5 boys, you are very busy and you have no time for artwork. So when the last boy was launched, I was looking around for something that would really interest me, and a daughter-in-law took a quilting class and thought it would be fun for the 2 of us to do together. And my heart started to thump. It was kind of like falling in love all over again. And I was hooked. I started quilting at the age of 60. My quilts are different. I broke every rule of color and every rule of good design, and I just paid no attention to all those things I learned in art school. And one of the things that I'm known for is colorful houses. I took a class, and it was taught by Barbara Dallas, and it was traditional red schoolhouse. We were to bring white, and we were to bring reds. I made the 2 blocks. I was into my 3rd one, and I thought, this is absolutely stupid, Freddy. They were all gonna look the same, and for over 100 years, that block had been made. So I went through my meager stash, and I thought to myself, what would really annoy the neighbors? So I got out lime, green, and hot pink, and orange, and purple, and I made 6 blocks using just screaming color. And I went back to class the next week, and we all sat and showed our red and white blocks. I showed mine, and after I went up to the teacher and I showed her the blocks I had made, and she said, Freddie, these are sensational, keep going. And had she said to me, burn these, don't show them to anybody, I would not be quilting today. Another quilt is when I met Gwen Marston. And I think our friendship encompassed about 15 years. And they were more scrap quilts. Gwen was in charge of design, and I was in charge of color. We spent a lot of time admiring our work. I think that it's not only important to make a quilt, but it's important to fall in love with the quilt. In 2017, I became very ill, and it was heart failure. At that point, they thought that I was going to die, so they called hospice. As I was sick, I was laying in bed, and I could actually feel the creativity leaving my body, and just this nothingness took over. And I woke up one morning, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and at that point I weighed 97 pounds. And I said to myself, Freddy, unless you start eating, you're going to be dead in a week. So I went into my studio. I had recently taken a class about Matisse, and I guess it was stuck in my brain. And so I made a face, just cutting out fabric and gluing. And I was off and running, and I made a vow to myself that I would make one face every day. And that's what kept me going. And so every morning I would get up, whether I felt like it or not, I would make a face. And so that was about 3 years ago. And I am still making faces, and I still haven't run out of ideas. I liked them so much in my studio that I put them up in my bedroom. And a couple of people have said to me, how can you sleep in here with all these people looking at you? And I say, well, it's funny, but when I go to sleep, I close my eyes. At flunked hospice, just with a big F, I asked my doctor, I said, how come I survived? Most people that go into heart failure. She said, you decided not to die. I knew that, for one thing, I wanted to see what happened with my grandchildren. I have 13 grandchildren, 9 of which live locally. I'm 90. I need more help. So Christina comes as my friend, and we do things together. Christina does my cutting for me, then I create the face. Even though I can't see well, I have a quilter. Her name is Jean Impey. I send them to her, and she quilts them and makes them come alive. Making a piece of art is just doing what your heart tells you to do, and you don't have to follow any rules except for your own. Quilting has kept me alive. I want my spirit of creativity to live beyond me. I think I've lived my best life, and I think that's the greatest thing you can do.
So what do you think, you guys? Isn't Freddy amazing? I love that her house matches what she plays with when she creates. And wouldn't you know, the day before we came, she turned 90. So we got to celebrate her birthday with her. It was just simply amazing.
Isn't that the cutest?
Is that just darling? Oh, look at this. 90, the big 90.
And also I'm very, very lucky because Sujata's in my life. I love how she works, and honestly, a lot of the things I heard about today, I didn't know. So thank you, Sujata, for opening up and sharing your loveliness with us. And remember, it really is a new day every day at the Quilt Show. Stick around, there's still the after set. Sujata, you do tours to India, and you do it with Amy Butler. Tell us about that, please.
Amy and I met in 2014. I was at Houston Market. I had just published my book, and I was just walking down the aisle, checking out the booths, and from far I saw her, and she kind of leaned, and I'm like, oh, that's Amy Butler. And so we sort of just walked towards each other.
Yeah.
And she was asking about my quilts, and after talking for a while, she said, I want to go to India. And I said, oh my gosh, let's do that. And so in 2016, early 2016, Amy and I went to India, and we traveled to 2 states and explored all the things that we wanted to do. And right then and then we decided that let's bring people over here, because if we are having so much fun, all the other artists will have the same fun.
So if I sign up on your tour, what can I expect?
You will experience the total cultural immersion in India. We do tours that combine the cooking experience, workshops like indigo dyeing, block printing, Leheria dyeing, which is one type of indigo dyeing again. We go to palaces and forts to get the architecture down of India. We go to textile museums and local markets. We meet people. There's shopping that involves antique quilt shopping to fabric shopping, and it's just loaded with just excitement all day long.
Well, then you also work on this, right?
Yes, so this is one of the workshops that I do. Amy teaches something and I teach quilting, and this is the workshop that we do one day at the hotel. We have the spa lined up for everybody, and people go to spa, then they come to the class, and everybody takes turn, and so it's like a whole day of just sort of, again, getting to know everybody as a group, and we built the community like that. So then those people who go to the tour, they stay in touch with each other, which is also really
Where do you
nice.
stay? What kind of accommodations?
There are hotels over there. We kind of stick to the 5-star hotel, and we make sure that we eat only at these hotels. If we have to do takeout, we also take it from the hotel, so that we try to make sure that people don't get sick.
So how do people find out about this?
They can go to my website, or they can go to Amy's website and find out all, our upcoming workshops together, which is to India.
In preparing for this, you said everybody wants to go back.
Everybody wants to go back. I haven't heard a single person saying that, oh, I'm never going to come back here. So experience alone, just, I've heard people actually say that I was so afraid to go to India, but now that I have come here, I don't know why I waited so long, and I can't wait to go back. This will not be my last time. So that feels good.
Thank you so much for being here today. We've waited a long time to get together, and you are just a gift to our little mini group, a gift to the quilting world. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks, Alex. It's been fun.